Hey there, welcome back everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into something I know a lot of you are thinking about based on what you sent us.
Right.
We're talking realistic saving strategies.
Yeah.
You sent over that article, 10 tips for achieving realistic savings goals, and of course, a bunch of your own really insightful notes. We're going way beyond the usual advice today.
Should be fun.
It really should. And joining me, helping us all glean some seriously actionable insights, is our financial expert who, let me tell you, has a knack for spotting those aha moments, ready to turn those savings dreams into realities.
Born ready. Let's do it.
Okay, let's dive in. One thing that really struck me right off the bat in that article was, how much it emphasizes really knowing where you are financially, like right now, before you even start thinking of goals.
Yeah,
Seems obvious, right?
it does.
But how often do we actually skip that part?
It's so tempting to jump to the exciting stuff, but honestly, this groundwork, it really is essential. The article, it compares it to planning a road trip, like without even knowing where your car is parked.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah. And you mentioned in your notes that you've tried budgeting before, so this might be familiar territory, but have you ever tracked every single expense, for a whole month?
See, now you're making me a little scared, honestly.
Yeah.
Confronting all those financial oops moments.
It can be eye-opening for sure, but also, really empowering.
Okay.
Imagine you're shining a light on all those little leaks in your financial ship.
Right.
That daily latte, that forgotten subscription, maybe, they really do add up. And the article highlights this as a way to, really understand your spending patterns, and then you can make conscious choices.
Okay, so it's not just about being like, no more lattes. It's about figuring out what your actual priorities are. Maybe those lattes are non-negotiable,
Exactly.
but then you find those savings, somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about aligning your spending with your values. Now, you also mentioned wanting to build a solid emergency fund.
Yes.
That's a fantastic goal.
Yeah.
And this initial assessment, it ties directly into that.
Okay, I'm seeing the connection here. So you need to know how much wiggle room you even have to figure out how much you can realistically put towards that.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really interesting. The article, it delves into these high-yield savings accounts. It's like a way to make that emergency fund really work harder for you.
Okay, I've heard of those, but honestly, high yield always sounds a bit like financial jargon to me. Like, what's the actual difference between that and just my regular savings account?
It's all about the interest rate. Think of it like this. A regular savings account might be offering something like, I don't know, a measly 0.05% interest, which is basically like earning pennies on your savings.
Okay, yeah, not exactly going to make me rich anytime soon.
Right. But a high yield savings account, that might offer something like 2% or even higher,
Wow.
which
Huh.
means your money is growing so much faster, especially over time. And this is thanks to the magic of compound interest.
Okay, magic is my favorite word when it comes to money. But seriously, break it down for me. How does compound interest actually work?
So it's like a snowball effect. You're earning interest on your initial savings, but then that interest starts earning even more interest, and so on and so on. Imagine, let's say, putting $1,000 in a high-yield savings account with a 2% interest rate.
Okay.
After that first year, you're earning, what, $20 in interest.
Okay.
But here's the kicker, right? In year two, you're not just earning interest on that initial $1,000. You're earning interest on $1,020.
Wow, so it's like free money.
In a way, yes. And the longer you leave that money to grow, the more powerful that compounding effect becomes. It's why starting early with savings, even small amounts, can make a huge difference down the line.
Okay, that makes so much more sense now. I'm definitely adding research high-yield savings accounts to my to-do list.
Excellent. Now let's talk about those savings objectives you mentioned in your notes. Remember that dream vacation you wrote about? Well, the article suggests using those SMART criteria to turn that dream into a tangible plan.
Okay, so I know SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Yes.
But how do we actually put those into practice? Like when it comes to saving for something like a vacation?
Okay, so let's say your dream vacation is, I don't know, a trip to Hawaii, and you estimate it'll cost around $5,000. Instead of just saying, I want to save for Hawaii, you'd specify, I want to save $5,000 for, let's say, a 10-day trip to Hawaii in 12 months.
Okay.
See how that instantly becomes so much more actionable?
It's like having a clear roadmap instead of just wandering around hoping to bump into Hawaii.
Exactly. And this is where that measurable part comes in. By breaking down that big, scary goal, that $5,000, into smaller, monthly or even weekly targets, you can actually track your progress and stay motivated along the way.
Okay, so if I need to save $5,000 in 12 months, that's what, like $416 a month? Or if we break it down even further, roughly $100 per
Here
week.
you go.
Suddenly it feels way less daunting, right?
Exactly. And this actually ties into another point the article really emphasizes, which is celebrating those small victories. Each time you hit a savings milestone, even if it's just, $100 closer to that Hawaiian sunset, acknowledge your progress.
Oh, I love that. It's like giving yourself permission to enjoy the journey, not just the destination,
Yeah,
right?
precisely. And celebrating those small wins, it actually rewires our brains to associate saving with positive emotions. It's
Okay.
true. So then it becomes something we actually crave rather than dread.
That's fascinating. Tell me more about this whole like brain hacking aspect of saving.
Okay, so our brains are kind of hardwired, right, to prioritize that immediate gratification over those long-term rewards.
Ugh, tell me about it.
Right. So when we only focus on that distant goal, like that Hawaiian vacation a year from now,
Yeah.
it's easy to get sidetracked by those in-the-moment spending temptations.
Oh, tell me about it. That new gadget, that trendy outfit. They always seem so much more appealing when I'm like browsing online at night.
Exactly. But when we celebrate those small wins along the way, we're basically tricking our brains into thinking, hey, saving isn't so bad. It actually feels good.
I love that. I'm all about finding those little hacks that make this whole saving money thing feel less like a chore and more like a fun challenge.
And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about shifting our perspective from I have to save to I get to save.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. We're not depriving ourselves. We're investing in our dreams, and our future selves will thank us for it.
I love that reframe.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've got those SMART goals. We're breaking them down into like manageable chunks. We're celebrating those wins.
Yes.
But what about the relevant part of SMART? How do we make sure our savings goals are truly aligned with, what actually matters most to us?
That's where a little bit of self-reflection comes in.
Okay.
Take some time to really think about, what are your values? What are your priorities? What truly brings you joy?
Okay, so if I'm like super passionate about travel, experiencing new cultures, a savings goal for, I don't know, a down payment on a house in the suburbs might not be as motivating as saving for that, like, around the world trip I've always dreamed of.
Exactly. Your savings goals should light you up, right?
Yeah.
They should reflect what's truly important to you, not what, society or external pressures are dictating.
That's such an important reminder, honestly. It's about designing a life we actually love, one financial goal at a time. Okay, so we've covered the S, the M, the A, and the R of SMART. Now let's talk about the T time bound.
Ah, yes, deadlines. Our greatest friend and our worst enemy, right? Depending on how you look at them.
They can either motivate us or send us into a total tailspin of procrastination.
Precisely. But when it comes to savings goals, setting a specific time frame, it's crucial, honestly, for staying accountable and motivated.
Yeah.
It adds a sense of urgency, it helps us prioritize our spending.
Oh, yeah. I'm all about adding a little urgency to my savings game. It's like scheduling that workout class, right? You're way more likely to show up if it's actually in your calendar.
Exactly. So let's go back to that Hawaiian vacation example. We've already established you want to save $5,000 within a year. Now let's break that down even further.
Okay, I'm game.
Let's say you want to, book those flights, get the accommodations sorted 6 months in advance to maybe secure the best deals. That means you need to have saved at least half of your total goal, so $2,500 by then.
Okay, I see what you mean. Breaking it down like this, it just makes it feel so much more manageable and less overwhelming. It's not about like magically summoning $5,000 out of thin air. It's about consistently saving a smaller amount over time.
Exactly. And this is where that time-bound part really comes into play. By setting that 6-month deadline for saving $2,500, you're creating that sense of urgency, that accountability.
And if we miss a deadline,
It happens.
it's not about beating ourselves up. It's about reassessing, adjusting our plan, maybe even celebrating our flexibility a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Because let's be real, life rarely goes according to plan. And our financial goals, they need to be flexible enough to adapt to those unexpected, twists and turns.
And that actually brings us to another really key point you highlighted in your notes, which is the importance of prioritizing our savings goals, especially when those unexpected expenses rear their ugly heads. It's like that saying, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans.
So true. And speaking of life happening, we also need to account for those less than exciting, but oh so important financial obligations.
Yeah.
The ones that aren't as Instagrammable as a Hawaiian vacation, but are like crucial for our overall financial well-being.
You're talking about those essential but not so thrilling things like building up that emergency fund, paying down debt, maybe even starting to think about retirement savings.
You got it. These might not be as glamorous as, that dream vacation or that shiny new gadget, but they're the foundation of a solid financial future.
I'm noticing a theme here. It's all about finding that balance, right?
Yes.
Balancing our desire for those like fun, immediate gratifications with the need to plan for our future selves. And those unexpected curveballs life throws our way.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about finding that sustainable balance that allows us to, enjoy life today while still building that secure and fulfilling future.
Okay, wise financial guru. Before we dive into those really practical strategies for actually achieving this whole delicate dance between living in the present and planning for the future, let's take a quick pause to recap all the wisdom we've unpacked so far in part one of our deep dive.
Sounds like a plan. All right, so where were we? Oh, right, we were talking about understanding those spending habits, exploring those high-yield savings accounts, and using the SMART criteria to, actually set actionable, relevant goals.
Yes. And acknowledging that, it's not all about those fun goals, right? We've got to build those essential but not so thrilling financial foundations.
Exactly. It's about balance.
Balance, always.
And speaking of balancing those competing priorities, let's dive into the article's insights on actually prioritizing those various savings goals. You mentioned in your notes you're juggling a few different financial aspirations right now, building up that emergency fund, saving for that dream Hawaiian vacation, and maybe even, starting to think about a down payment someday.
It does feel like a lot to juggle sometimes. Like, where do you even begin when you've got multiple financial dreams swirling around in your head?
It's like choosing your favorite dessert. They all sound delicious,
the
right?
best problem to have.
But you can't always have them all at once. The article suggests starting by, just ranking your savings goals in order of importance.
Okay, a prioritization game?
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah.
But how do you decide which goal actually takes precedence? It's like choosing a favorite child.
It can be tough. Here's a helpful framework, though. Start by considering your short-term versus your long-term goals. Those short-term goals, like that Hawaiian getaway, they can be so motivating.
For sure.
But it's equally important to lay those essential financial foundations for the future.
That makes sense. Okay, so if I'm starting from scratch, building up that solid emergency fund would probably be priority number one.
Absolutely. Having that financial safety net, it just provides such peace of mind.
For sure.
And it can actually prevent you from going into debt if those unexpected expenses pop up. Once you've got that solid foundation, you can then, shift your focus to those longer term goals, like saving for a down payment, for example.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this whole prioritization puzzle comes together. But what about those unexpected expenses that always seem to pop up at the worst possible moment?
Yeah.
How do we factor those into our beautifully crafted savings plan?
Flexibility, my friend. It's a recurring theme in your chosen article, and for good reason.
Okay.
Life rarely goes according to plan, and our financial goals need to be able to, roll with the punches a little bit.
So it's okay to adjust our savings targets or timelines if something unexpected comes up, like a medical bill or a car repair or something.
Absolutely. Don't beat yourself up if you need to, redirect some of those savings to cover those unexpected costs. The key is to view those detours as temporary adjustments, not a complete derailment.
Okay, that is reassuring to hear. It's about progress, not perfection.
Precisely. And speaking of progress, let's talk about one of the most powerful strategies mentioned in the article, which is the power of automating your savings.
Okay, yes. I've heard a lot of buzz about automating your finances, but honestly, it still feels a bit like a mystery to me. How exactly does it work, and why is it supposedly so much more effective than just manually transferring money to my savings account each month?
Happy to demystify. So imagine this. You set up these automatic transfers from your checking account to your savings account, and it happens like clockwork every month. The money's gone before you even have a chance to spend it. You're paying yourself first before any other bills or temptations even arise.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's those automatic bill payments that I never have to think about, except in this case, I'm the one reaping the benefits.
Exactly. And the beauty of automating your savings is it takes the willpower and the forgetfulness out of the equation.
Because let's be honest, even with the best of intentions, life gets busy, right? And it's easy to slip up on those manual transfers.
Absolutely. We've all been there staring at our bank accounts at the end of the month, wondering where all the money went and why those savings goals feel like so far out of reach.
It's like those healthy eating goals that fly out the window when you're stressed and tired. And the only thing that sounds good is that bag of chips in the pantry.
I love that analogy. Our willpower is like a muscle. It gets tired.
It really does.
But when we automate our savings, we're essentially like hitting the easy button on our financial goals. We're setting ourselves up for success without even having to think about it.
Okay, I'm convinced. Automating my savings sounds like a total no-brainer, but practically speaking, how do I actually set it up? Is it really as simple as, like, clicking a few buttons on my banking app?
You got it. Most banks and financial institutions these days make it incredibly easy to set up those automatic transfers online or through their mobile apps.
Okay, so walk me through it. What are the steps?
Okay, so step one, as we discussed, right, is deciding on that like comfortable yet challenging savings rate. So how much do you actually want to be funneling into your savings each month or each pay period?
Okay, and then once I have that magic number in mind,
You'll log into your checking account, navigate to that transfer section, usually pretty clearly labeled,
okay?
and you'll choose the setup recurring transfer option.
And from there, I'm guessing it's just a matter of filling in the blanks with my savings account information, the amount I want to transfer, how often I want those transfers to happen, and the start date.
You've got it. It really is usually that simple. Some banks might have a slight variation in their interface, but the basic steps are generally the same. You're essentially creating this set it and forget it system that works tirelessly behind the scenes to grow your wealth.
I love how technology makes it so easy to be, like, financially responsible these days. It's like having a personal finance assistant, but without the awkward small talk.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about where to direct those automated savings. You mentioned a few different goals, that emergency fund, the Hawaiian vacation, and then maybe a down payment down the line. The good news is you can actually divide your automated savings between different accounts, really tailoring your strategy to your specific goal.
Oh, okay. So, for example, I could set up an automatic transfer of, say, like $100 per paycheck to my emergency fund, another $50 to my, Hawaiian vacation fund, and then maybe even a smaller amount, like $25, to a separate account that's earmarked for that future down payment.
Exactly. It's all about breaking down those bigger goals into smaller, more manageable chunks, and then automating those contributions so you don't even have to think about it.
I love how this system just makes saving, like, almost effortless.
It can be. And here's a bonus tip. A lot of employers offer direct deposit, where you can actually split your paycheck between different accounts.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that, but never really looked into it.
It's great. So instead of having your entire paycheck deposited into your checking account and then having to manually transfer money to your savings accounts, you can actually have a portion of it automatically routed to savings right from the get-go.
Okay, game changer. That sounds amazing for, like, busy people, who don't want to spend hours, like, fiddling with different accounts and transfers.
Exactly. It's about streamlining those finances, making sure those savings goals are prioritized from the moment you get paid.
I'm definitely going to look into that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's a game changer, for sure. And speaking of simplifying our finances and making saving feel more approachable, let's talk about another really popular strategy the article mentions, the Roundup method.
Oh, yes. I've heard of those apps, that connect to your bank account and automatically round up your purchases to the nearest dollar, and then funnel all that spare change into a savings account.
Exactly. It might not sound like much, but honestly, those small amounts, they add up surprisingly quickly over time, especially when you're not actively thinking about them.
It's like that old saying, take care of the pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves.
There you go. And
Yeah.
these Roundup apps, they just make it so effortless, right? You set it and forget it, knowing that they're working behind the scenes to, boost those savings without requiring any like major lifestyle changes.
I love that, like a little secret weapon in our quest for financial freedom. Okay, before we get to the grand finale of this deep dive, any other, like, ninja-level savings tricks you want to share with us?
I do have one final point from your article that I found particularly intriguing. It's the concept of temptation bundling.
Okay, temptation bundling. That sounds a little dangerous, like something out of a behavioral economics textbook.
It's actually a really clever strategy for making those, those less than thrilling financial tasks,
Yeah.
like reviewing our budgets or researching like investment options, a little bit more enjoyable.
Okay, now I'm all ears. Tell me more about this temptation bundling magic.
So the basic idea is to pair something you should do, in this case, tending to your finances,
Right.
with something that you genuinely enjoy doing.
Ooh, okay. So, for example, if I love listening to podcasts or audiobooks, I could treat myself to an episode of my favorite show or a chapter of a captivating book while I'm reviewing my budget or researching different savings account options.
Exactly. Or let's say you're a foodie. You love trying those new restaurants. You can make a rule that you only allow yourself to dine at that new trendy spot if you've spent, I don't know, at least 30 minutes beforehand reviewing your finances, making sure you're on track with those savings goals.
I love that. It's like we're rewarding ourselves for being financially responsible. And
Exactly.
it takes the dread out of those tasks that we often put off and procrastinate on.
Precisely. Because, let's be honest, managing our finances, it's not always the most, exhilarating activity.
Not exactly a Netflix binge.
Right. But it's essential for achieving our financial goals and ultimately designing a life we love.
Well said. And speaking of designing a life we love, I think we've reached the perfect stopping point for part 2 of our deep dive into the world of saving money.
We have covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We've tackled the importance of prioritizing our savings goals, demystified that magic of automating our savings, and explored those little hacks like temptation bundling that just make saving money feel, I don't know, a little bit less like a chore and a little bit more like a fun challenge.
And we've acknowledged that, life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes we need to adjust those savings targets, timelines, to accommodate those unexpected curveballs that, life throws our way.
Exactly. And even amidst those detours and adjustments, consistency is key.
Always.
Even small, consistent efforts can lead to some really significant results over time. But the journey's not over yet.
That's right.
Be sure to join us for part 3 of this deep dive, where we'll uncover some truly surprising and unexpected strategies that can transform your relationship with money and accelerate your journey towards financial freedom. Stay tuned for more financial wisdom, savvy savers. Welcome back to the deep dive, ready to unearth some truly unexpected saving strategies.
Oh, yeah, let's get into it.
In the last 2 parts, we really laid the groundwork, from nailing down those SMART goals to putting our savings on autopilot.
Right.
But now it's time to get, I don't know, a little creative.
And maybe even a little, sneaky.
Ooh, sneaky. I
Well,
like it.
in a good way, of course.
Mhm.
We're talking about those subtle shifts in mindset and behavior that can have, a surprisingly big impact on your bottom line.
I love it. Because, let's be honest, when it comes to saving money, every little bit counts.
Absolutely. You mentioned in your notes that you're, really interested in psychology, and this is where behavioral economics comes into play.
Ooh, yeah.
The article, it highlights a few strategies that actually kind of tap into the way our brains are wired,
Okay.
helping us, outsmart our own tendencies to overspend.
Okay, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm all about understanding the why behind our financial habits. It's like once we know how our brains work, then we can work with them instead of against them.
Exactly. One strategy the article mentions is, have you heard of this? It's called pre-commitment.
Pre-commitment. No.
So it's basically about setting up, roadblocks that make it harder for us to indulge in those impulse purchases.
Okay, so Ulysses tying himself to the mast so he wouldn't be tempted by the sirens.
Exactly. Except in this case, your sirens might be those, tempting online shopping carts or that buy now, pay later button.
Oh, so true.
Right. So a pre-commitment strategy could be as simple as, removing your credit card information from your online accounts or unsubscribing from those tempting email newsletters that always seem to, magically know your weaknesses.
Ugh, those email subject lines are designed to bypass our rational minds and go straight for our add to cart button.
They are good at what they do, but by creating those little roadblocks, like unsubscribing or maybe even using a separate email address for, online shopping,
Oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, you're essentially giving yourself a chance to, pause and reassess before actually making those impulse purchases.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So it's by the time I've actually gone through the effort of re-entering my credit card information or subscribing to that newsletter again,
Yeah.
the urge to buy might have subsided, right?
Exactly.
And I've saved myself from some potential budget regret.
It's about introducing friction into those tempting spending pathways. Another strategy the article mentions is this idea of, have you heard of this one? Visibility bias.
Visibility bias. That one rings a bell, but I'm not entirely sure. Remind me.
Okay, so our brains, they tend to focus on what's immediately in front of us, right?
Okay.
So when we see those tempting items, displayed really prominently in stores or popping up in our social media feeds, it's really easy to get sucked in.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
Those targeted ads are like, hey, we know you were just looking at that pair of shoes online.
They know us so well.
Yeah.
But we can actually use this whole visibility bias thing to our advantage when it comes to saving money.
Okay, how?
The article suggests like creating visual reminders of your savings goals. Okay.
And like placing them in strategic locations.
Okay, I'm visualizing like a vision board filled with like images of tropical beaches and like cozy cottages representing those dream vacations and future homes that I'm saving for.
Love it. Visual cues can be so powerful. Or even something simpler, right? Like changing your phone's lock screen to a picture that represents your savings goal. Or, I don't know, writing your goal on a sticky note and putting it on your bathroom mirror or your refrigerator.
Yeah, it's like those daily affirmations, but instead of focusing on like positive self-talk, where we're reminding ourselves of like our financial aspirations and why we're choosing to save over spending in those like tempting moments.
Exactly. Because when we keep those goals top of mind, we're more likely to make choices that actually support them. Now, let's talk about one final and perhaps the most unexpected strategy mentioned in the article,
Okay, hit me with it.
the power of community.
Community. Okay, I have to admit, I wouldn't have immediately associated community with saving money. But I'm sensing there's a connection here. There really is. So there's this like growing movement around financial wellness, and it's becoming more and more common for people to actually share their savings goals, their challenges, their successes with like friends, family, maybe even online communities.
That makes a lot of sense, is having that built-in support system for our financial journeys.
Totally.
You know, we can celebrate our wins together, we can commiserate over those shared financial frustrations, and we can even learn from each other's experiences, right?
Exactly.
Oh,
And sometimes just knowing that we're not alone in those like, financial struggles, it can be incredibly motivating in itself.
absolutely. And it's like when we share our goals with others, we're more likely to actually hold ourselves accountable and like stay the course.
Precisely. It's like having an accountability buddy, but for our finances.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe, our enthusiasm might even inspire some of those people around us to start prioritizing their own financial well-being.
Now, that's a win-win. This has been so eye-opening, this whole deep dive into the world of saving money. I mean, we really have explored everything from like the psychology behind it all
Yeah.
to like, those tiny little hacks and those bigger systems that can
Think
help.
automation. Don't forget automation.
Automation, yes. And, community, that's a new one. Like so
Yeah.
many different strategies that I feel like are really accessible to everyone, no matter like where they're at financially.
That's right. It's not about being restrictive or depriving yourself. It's about finding a sustainable way to reach your goals.
Exactly. Well, on that note of consistency and celebration, we've reached the end of our deep dives into the world of saving money.
It's been a pleasure.
The pleasure was all ours. But before we say goodbye, let's leave our listeners with a final thought. A little pearl of financial wisdom, something to carry with them on their own savings journeys.
You are capable of achieving those financial dreams. It starts with a single step, a commitment to yourself, and honestly, just a willingness to embrace the journey.
So beautifully said. And remember, every dollar saved, it's a step towards creating the life you want. Thanks for tuning in to the deep dive. Until next time.